right into going live, huh? We're in. No music. We're just gonna do it. Going cold into the shoot. All right. Let's just call it inflation. The inflation you don't know. Make it sound like a big hug. Okay, cool. Hold on. People are now, buddies of mine are now texting me exotic car stuff. All right. Welcome to Mr. Texas Real Estate, the Texas Real Estate Radio Network. It's Jason Bible here in the studio, enjoying inflation. Everyone's freaking out because the Federal Reserve is raising rates. I heard, I was listening to Peter Schiff this morning. I think it was from his Friday show. And he said, you know, everybody in England, oh, by the way, if I wince, you guys can't see this on the camera. I got sunburned so bad. So you guys know I like those Bucky shorts that are running shorts. Like they're just long enough to cover everything. They got built-in underwear. That's how high these shorts are. This makes Magnum PI look like he's wearing a tuxedo. So I'm on the lake this weekend, and the top of my thighs are burned so bad they're purple. It is rough. So it's terrible. I'm gonna go home after the show, and I'm gonna put those shorts back on because I need to air these beasts out. And then I had to take some medication today, and I actually do an injection for it, and it was painful. Cutting right through a purple sunburn. It was awful. So anyway, it'll tear you up a little bit. But so we got purple on the lake this weekend. The rest of me is not, I don't think, too bad. It's just, man, I just absolutely roasted. So I had a great time this weekend. We got to do exotic car stuff. Got to go to the lake. Went out Saturday night. Had an absolute blast. Curtis put a group together of 12 of us. And it was one of these cooking things. And unfortunately, there was one other couple that we did not know that was there, and we thought the entire time, these people are going to throw us out any minute. I mean, it was a blast. So thanks to everybody that came out Saturday night. We had just an absolute great time. So in any case, inflation. Listen to Peter Schiff's show this morning, and he was talking about the Bank of England. And over in the UK, they've increased rates all the way to 1%. They're all the way up to 1%. That is a 13-year high, by the way. You know what's hilarious? Their inflation is running 10%. So if you think an increase by 1% is going to stop what's happening in the UK, you are sorely mistaken. Much like here in the United States. I just walked back in our, we call it the cafeteria, even though it's not a cafeteria. It's just basically big storage space right now. And 2/3 of that room is full of Airbnb stuff and water heaters and just like a ton of stuff. There's at least 3 houses worth of Airbnb stuff in there. You can imagine how much that is. Think of a 3-bed, 2-bath house. It's 3 of the furnishings, sheets and covers and towels and pillows and soap dispense. It's 3 houses worth of that. Now, we can't stack it to the ceiling because the ceiling is like 25 feet tall or something. But it is completely full in there with Airbnb stuff. That's what inflation looks like. So for folks like us, houses aren't even done, and we're ordering everything we can just because we don't know how much longer it's going to be in stock. It's absolutely insane. And I don't see this stopping anytime soon. That's actually what supply side inflation looks like. There's 2 sides of inflation. We're going to get real nerdy today. There's 2 sides of inflation. There's demand side and supply side. Remember, there's a supply and demand curve. And they're really not curved. They call it a curve, but they don't draw them as curves. I think academically they're considered curves. They're really just lines. Supply and demand. If you have not looked up supply and demand curve since like high school, I recommend that you continue driving, pull up your phone, Google it up, and try not to run anybody. I'm kidding. Oh, no, everybody's going to get freaked out. I'm going to get 900 emails. Jason, you're telling people to text and drive. Everybody chill out. Obviously, that is called it's a little tongue-in-cheek. We're just trying to be funny up here. So everybody chill out. So you can pull over your vehicle or stop sending that email and just open up a new browser tab, supply and demand curve or supply and demand chart. And it'll show you what the supply and demand chart looks like. You can have supply side inflation, you can have demand side inflation. We are in this really precarious place, very similar to the 70s. Not the exact same, just similar. When you say similar, people don't know the difference between similar and the same. They're very similar, but how it's occurring is not the same. Which is why, when I tell you this, increasing interest rates is not going to stop inflation. I think that's one of the things that I have a problem with on Peter Schiff's show right now is it's like increase rates, it's going to stop inflation. No, it's not. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe it at all. It makes no sense. In this modern economy, and I'll explain here in a little bit why I believe that to be true, there's a couple guys who have been writing articles about this on Seeking Alpha, and I think they're absolutely right. And that is raising rates is not going to curb inflation. We have supply side inflation, we have demand side inflation. So let's talk about what each of those look like. Demand side inflation is real simple. More money in the hands of consumers increases prices. It's that simple. That's it. More money in the hands of consumers. Supply remains unchanged. Prices are going up. That simple. Printing money creates inflation. Sort of, as long as it gets in the hands of consumers. This is why we didn't experience rapid inflation in 08, 09 until about 2012, because those dollars that were printed, which were really just kind of IOUs from the government to, how can I put this, shore up the balance sheets of banks, didn't really make it into the hands of consumers. However, during COVID, there's a couple ways that did make it in the hands of consumers. Obviously, you guys are familiar with STEMI checks. Federal government gave you a check that you're out there using. The other way it worked was, we don't have to pay our mortgage. The mortgage moratorium is inflationary. You can't tell me with a straight face that everybody who got a moratorium on their mortgage all of a sudden didn't have the money to pay their mortgage. A lot of times they spent that money somewhere else. And that somewhere else was for goods and services in the economy. That's just the reality. Now, do some people save their money? Maybe they were, they couldn't pay their mortgage, or, if somebody lost jobs. That's all certainly plausible. However, a mortgage moratorium is absolutely inflationary because those dollars were redirected to other parts of the economy. So that's demand side. Increasing demand because there's more dollars in the hands of consumers. And what do they go out and buy? All the cool stuff that you and I want. Because it seems like anything that's cool that I want has like quadrupled in prices. In fact, Brian and I were talking earlier today. He's up Lake Conroe looking at some places. He looked at Saturday and looked on Sunday. We've been shopping for a lakefront house for like over a year now. And we're seeing the prices just skyrocket. Now, not everybody's buying lakefront in Lake Conroe, but I find it, and we're going to talk about this on the supply side, I find it really interesting whenever I order lunch meat from H-E-B, a lot of times it's out of stock. That's kind of weird, isn't it? So demand side inflation is more money chasing fewer goods, or the same number of goods. We get back from the break, we'll talk more about inflation. It's Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. All right, welcome back. Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. Today we're talking about inflation. So that's demand side inflation, more money chasing the same number of goods. Now let's talk about supply side. What do you think causes supply side inflation? Less goods, same number of dollars chasing fewer goods. So demand stays the same, but supply becomes constrained. So how have we experienced, or what are the causes of supply side inflation over the last couple of years? COVID is a great example of this. Auto manufacturers shut down. Chip manufacturers shut down. Canada, I think, is still shut down, which is where we get a lot of our wood from. A lot of our wood comes out of the timber mills for North America out of Canada. Well, what happens? This is really, the wood thing is one of the most fascinating things to me. Companies shut down, or you're doing work from home. Everyone's working from home for COVID. So what ends up happening, any industrious gentleman or a wife that has a long honey-do list starts staring at you from across the home office. Boy, it'd be really nice to have that deck redone, or really nice to have that pergola built. And guess what? Now that you've got nothing else to do because all the bars and restaurants are closed, you're not meeting any clients, you don't have any excuses. That's probably a better way to put it. So now you are jumping in your F-150 to go to Home Depot to pick up 2x4s, 4x4s, stain, other kinds of sealant, nails, screws, all that stuff. And now you're back at home building that pergola or deck or whatever honeydew project that you now have an infinite amount of time for, according to your spouse. So that's a situation where we have mills, North American mills, mostly in Canada, that are shuttered for COVID. And now we have an increase in demand because folks are at home with nothing else better to do than to build wood decks and pergolas in their backyard. So we are getting hit with two sides of inflation. Goods are shrinking and money is growing in the hands of consumers. So someone tell me where increasing the Fed funds rate and increasing interest rates is going to stop any of that. And the question is, it's not. Or the answer is, it's not. It's just that simple. This is not going to stop. I'll tell you one of the things, I even made a purchase decision change in the middle of COVID. I was looking for my personal house, and I was making offers on a bunch of houses. And what I realized is, you know what? When we all get locked in again, this will happen again. There's now precedent for it. This will absolutely happen again. It could be a potential terrorist threat, or it could be a new superbug, or whatever it could be. We now have precedent to lock down the entire country. When that happens again, I am not living in a house that does not have a pool. Gotta have a pool. Gotta have a pool and a hot tub and a cool backyard, just for your sanity. You don't have to have kids. You don't have to have somebody living with you. Just so you can walk around and enjoy a body of water and some cool lights and some cool speakers for your tunes. You're going to need some oasis close to you that you can enjoy. In fact, I said this, here's what changed in COVID. COVID changed the entire real estate market. The pinnacle of real estate, the big boys, the adults, has always been in commercial real estate. And you can pick your flavor. Doesn't matter if it's multifamily, light industrial, storage, it doesn't really matter. Office. At the end of the day, what we figured out during COVID, the most precious piece of real estate is single family. Period. Because when things get crazy, you want to stay at home. When you go on vacations, you don't stay in the big resort. You stay in an Airbnb. And I don't see those consumer habits changing anytime soon. So the reality of the real estate world is it got completely turned upside down. You had triple net leases with A+ class clients, Apple, Nike, and a bunch of others who decided to not pay their mortgages anymore. You can go look it up. There are entire news stories about it. And it's not like Apple and Nike don't have piles and piles of cash. Apple is one of the most cash-heavy companies in the world. They can pay their rent, but then they decided not to. And then, of course, Apple said, sue us. The courts are shut down. Of course, Apple is kind of a big company, so suing them is going to be a complete waste of time. I don't care. That's another funny thing. People talk about, oh, I'm going to sue so-and-so, I'm going to do this. I'm like, you know what? That contract you have is only as good as the legal team and the amount of money you have behind you. I get wholesalers and real estate investors, all that. They send me these non-circumvents and non-disclosures, NDAs. And I always like to push back and say, do you really have the horsepower to defend this? Because I'm willing to bet you don't. Anybody can sign any contract. You can be completely in the wrong, or you can be completely in the right. If you don't have the money and the resources, and by resources, I mean the best attorneys, like litigators, actual litigators, you ain't going to win. This is one of the reasons I don't work with some really big companies. We got approached by, let's say, a very big investment bank at one point. And I told my partner at the time, I said, if we ever have to go toe-to-toe with these guys, they got way more money, and they probably have half the city on retainer. So whose attorney are you going to, who is the guy that's going to or gal that's going to represent you? I mean, it's not just money. It's, can I even get access to the attorney that is best suited to fight for my interests in this business dispute? That's a big question. That's a very big question. When you start working with some of these companies, even the smaller ones that have got piles of cash, you got to be really, really careful. In fact, there's a whole cottage industry of going into businesses, signing some NDAs, some non-circumvents. They literally steal your business model, set it up with another company they invest in, or start a whole new company with somebody who is much more adept at building that sort of business. And then the business they originally learned these business ideas, try to sue them, and it goes nowhere. 5, 6, 7 years, millions of dollars in legal fees. Yeah, you may be right in the end, but you're broke. And you just blew all that money and time on defending your interests. So let's get back to demand and supply side inflation. We're seeing demand side inflation because there's a lot of money in the system. We're seeing supply side inflation because there's less goods and services being produced. It's absolutely insane. It's Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. All right, welcome back. Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. There's demand side and there's supply side inflation. Your investment portfolio, your family's net worth is tied to both. And let me explain that. Let's say you need to buy a new car this year. They've gone up somewhere between 10 and 20% in the last few years. And like I said, I don't see, let me stop right here because I think this is a really important point. This is not just real, this is very, very important because I read this and I see it and no one talks about it enough because it's 100% true. Prices never go down. Prices never go down. Prices never go down. Make sure that's really, really important. Now, you'll say, well, Jason, now you can buy a 900-inch TV for like $50. And 10 years ago, that thing was like 80 grand. And I'm like, okay, yes. But here's what I'll tell you. Your family does not live on the size of your TV. Like your family's net worth, your future with your family, your legacy has nothing to do with whether your kids grew up watching a 55-inch TV or an 85-inch. Nobody cares. Like, none of that matters. Now, what does matter is what's the cost of transportation? How about the cost of energy? The cost of single-family real estate, housing. I will tell you the best financial decision you can make right now is own the home you live in. There is no better financial decision you can make right now than owning the house you live in. In fact, when I talk to somebody, they try to tell me investment advice or sell me on a company they want me to invest in, or a company that, to do business with, and they tell me they don't own the house they live in. I have a real problem listening to anything else they say, because whatever comes out of their mouth doesn't even make any sense. Houses in Houston, Texas are appreciating 20% a year. They're going to hit 20% again this year. In fact, my prediction at the beginning of the year was 13%. We're already up like 7%. So we're probably going to hit another year of 20%. So for those people who are, quote, investors, they do what they flip houses, they do lending, they do, whatever it is they do in real estate that has to do with investing. And I find out they don't own the house they live in. I look at them like they're insane, because the best financial advice you can do is fix your cost of housing for the next 30 years. In fact, that same house you were going to buy 2 years ago is worth 40% more now. And if you know just a little bit of economics and finance, you also know prices never go down. Ever. Well, Jason, what about the last real estate crash? The median home price in Houston, Texas never went down. Never, ever went down. Now, could you catch a couple of deals from the house I was getting foreclosed on and it was a big piece of junk? People kind of forget this. They think that all those houses that went into foreclosure were like these beautiful 4 2.5s in Katy, Texas, that were built 3 years ago. That's not what happened. If you've walked, I can literally walk a house and I can damn near tell you where they're at in the foreclosure process. Every house we ever bought, every single one of them that had a financial issue, the house was a huge dump. It needed a massive amount of work. I'm not talking about kids got handprints on the wall and they're writing on crayon in the garage. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. I'm talking about major stuff. The AC vents have not been, or the air conditioning filters have not been changed in 5 years. There's foundation issues. The cabinets are ripped out of the kitchen. There's half rehab projects all over the place. Another one is like dark paint in the house. You very rarely ever see a house that has dark colors inside the house. It just doesn't look right. It makes the rooms look smaller, makes them look dark. Virtually no designer, aside from an accent wall, does that ever really make sense in most houses. Missing windows. AC doesn't work, so we're all using window units. I mean, you can go down the list. I can count on one hand, out of nearly 2,000 houses since 2013, the number of houses I walked that were in some financial distress that weren't a complete disaster. So part of what folks experienced in 2008 and 2009 was just people who were making poor financial decisions were finally kicked out of the labor market, meaning they lost their jobs and their homes eventually went with them. And their homes were not these beautiful houses in Katy or Sugar Land or Missouri City or Pearland or Friendswood. It was in those middle areas. Like Alief is a great example. Alief was eviscerated by foreclosures. Spring, eviscerated. Parts of Cypress. Like these are those B- class neighborhoods. These are not the A-class neighborhoods in Sugar Land and Mo City, Westview, River Oaks, Spring Branch, Memorial. These are not the A-class neighborhoods. These are those borderline C-B neighborhoods. In fact, a lot of them are C. When you really get down to it, a lot of them are C-class neighborhoods. These are the starter homes. These are the homes it's a first-time home buyer. They've been there 15 years. They're not the step-up buyer. It's that group. They've got weird house projects. They put weird additions on the house, too. Close in a patio. Don't realize that The concrete for the patio is not structural concrete. So then what happens is that addition they put in 5 years ago starts tearing away from the house and starts pulling the exterior wall out, which then causes more foundation issues inside the house. Plumbing issues, leaks that never get taken care of in the roof, or leaks in the plumbing that never get addressed. So a lot of those houses, I'll put it this way, the vast majority of those foreclosed houses were simply pieces of junk before the financial crisis. It's that simple. The apartment complexes were the same way. It was over-leveraged multifamily owners that continue to get loans, and then all of a sudden, financial crisis hits. They're evicting a lot of people, trying to get folks back in, but the apartments are complete pieces of garbage. What it really did was expose homeowners and commercial real estate investors that had poor financial decision-making in the marketplace. They made poor financial decisions. They didn't keep up their assets, which if they don't keep up their house, I can guarantee you they ain't making money. Very few people that the house isn't taken care of, they're not successful. Like, you kind of want to see where somebody's at in life, go to their house. Now, it doesn't have to be big and flashy and all that, but it should be pretty clean. Shouldn't be piles of, junk everywhere, piles of trash sitting around, half-painted walls, trim coming off, weird addition on the back, yard's a mess. Like, it's not a surprise when you start walking these foreclosures. But naive or inexperienced real estate investors think that, oh yeah, man, when the real estate market crashes, I'm going to go into Katy, Texas, where these houses are selling for 500 G's, and I'm going to get them for like 150 grand. I'm like, dude, that's not how it works at all. So on the inflation side, here's what's going to happen next. You've got to figure out how to build a portfolio that resists inflation or leverages it. We get back from the break, we'll talk about that. It's Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. All right, this is the last segment, right?
Last one.
Okay. Welcome back, Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. We're talking about inflation. All right, so I just painted a picture for you. One is inflation's coming from both the demand side, meaning consumers with money chasing deals, chasing assets, chasing goods, and from the supply side. Those same consumers are chasing goods and services that are now in short supply because of COVID. So now what do we do? Okay, Jason, I'm armed with this information. So then I shared with you what actually happened during the last real estate crash. And that is, world ended. Notice I call it a financial crash, not a real estate crash. It resulted in a real estate crash, but it was financial in nature. So financial crisis causes a real estate crash. And what were those houses that went on the market? They weren't beautiful houses, freshly painted, all nice inside and clean. No, the vast majority of them were a disaster. You don't make good financial decisions, you're probably not making good. This is a classic Jim Rohn quote, by the way. If you neglect your health, you're probably neglecting other things in your life. If you neglect your finances, you're probably neglecting things at home. If you're neglecting these other things, you're probably neglecting things in your relationships. Now, don't get me wrong, not everybody's perfect. But by and large, if you kind of got everything taken care of, got your stuff together, more than likely your house is in pretty good shape, you're in decent shape, and your financial future is in decent shape, making decent money at work. So when the financial crisis catches you without a job, you're not getting foreclosed on. I'm telling you this is absolutely true because I experienced it through that entire crisis. So now here's the question. Jason, here's the question. We're entering another financial crisis. This time it's called inflation. If you are in the S&P 500 and if your portfolio has been tracking along the S&P 500, you are down, meaning negative 15% year to date. Over the last 5 years, the S&P has returned about 15% a year, meaning since January, a whopping 4 months ago, you have lost 1 year's worth of gains. Plus, you've been hit with easily 10% inflation. You've lost 25% of your portfolio in 4 months. See, a lot of folks don't realize this. The way you get to the top is the stairs, but how you get to the bottom is the elevator. We're watching the elevator. This is absolutely true. This is true in everything. Business relationships, personal relationships, intimate relationships, your portfolio, your health, like all that stuff. The way to the top is the stairs. The way to the bottom is the elevator. Meaning when it falls apart fast. But when it's growing, it takes time. Got to walk the stairs. Some people a little faster than others. So now you've got this massive inflation and you've lost 15% of the market. Now what? You've got to find inflation-adjusted assets. And there's been one that stood the test of time for a millennia or two now, and that's real estate. I started the show with prices never go down. I literally just put in my HEB order. Mind you, I'm a single dude. My boys come over every now and then. It's usually over every other weekend. Or whenever, like, you know, my ex-wife and I are pretty cool about it. It's like, hey, you want this weekend? I got this going on. It's like super easy. And most of my meals are actually provided by, I'm doing this whole fitness thing, so I'm getting my meals sent to the office here. So I'm not ordering like a whole bunch of food. It was $225. And I ordered like 6 bottles of wine, like the cheapest, not the cheap, I'm not a big wine guy. So I'm like, and actually I heard this from a wine, like a real, not a wine snob, but a guy who really collects wine. There's a lot of people that like to talk about how much they spend on wine, and then, but an actual like dude that actually collects it. He goes, look, man, I'll tell you the deal. We're sitting there having dinner one day. I'm like, you're a big wine guy. He's like, yeah, I own all kinds of stuff. But he said, look, let me tell you a dirty secret about the wine business. He said, what's that? He said, never pay more than $25 for a bottle. I said, really? He goes, yeah, no, there's some stuff. If you have an acquired taste for something, maybe spring a little bit here and there. But he said, look, man, you start spending over $25, it's all personal preference at that point. And he said, the real collections get built below that $25 price point. Now, this was some years ago, so with inflation, it's probably $50. But he said at the end of the day, you get that good stuff, and it's usually $25, maybe $30. Buy a case of it, drink one, you know, for parties, open up a couple more. But that's really how it works. You're not out there buying these $10,000 bottles, $5,000 bottles. The guys that really collect these things, you buy them before they're known. That's kind of how we do real estate. We get into these markets where nobody's there yet. Look what happened in Surfside, Texas. We started buying there. People in Houston hadn't even heard about it. Now, like, everybody's down there. I go down to Surfside during the day, and it's like a real estate event. I'm like, where did all you guys come from? Oh, we heard you talking about it on the radio, man. So we kind of like just showed up, started buying stuff. How's it working out? Like, it's great. Same thing with Corpus Christi. Bunch of guys down there now. No one even talked about Corpus Christi 3 years ago. Now we go to our little bar on the island there. I run into a half dozen guys. Like, what are y'all doing here? Like, well, kind of heard you guys on the radio, so we started buying stuff. I'm like, okay, great. How's it working out? I'm like, man, it's awesome. All right. Cashmere Gardens, another favorite one of mine. I'm selling an apartment complex there right now. I start talking to some buddies, and they're like, oh, man, I bought that one over there at Cashmere after I heard you guys did this one. I'm like, okay, sounds good. That's the deal. You get in before anybody else. Now, of course, the question is, people say, well, Jason, I mean, surely there's no deals out there. There's no markets like that. Yeah, there are. Freeport's one. Alvin is definitely one. We're about to contract a property. I'm not going to tell you what neighborhood it's in, but it's just took me by surprise. I'm like, yeah, we'll take that. But it doesn't have to be that complicated. How do you protect your income, your wealth from inflation? Simple. Buy real estate. Oh, by the way, it's not Bitcoin. Guess who turned out they were right on that one? Bitcoin is getting slaughtered right now. Slaughtered. And I told you guys it would happen. Bitcoin is not a hedge against anything. When people need money, they liquidate those assets. When people need money, they don't sell their house. They don't sell their house because their HEB budget doubled in the last 9 months. In fact, I was kind of surprised. Steak's on sale, by the way. So if you guys want to do some, I'm going to be doing some caveman style steaks. I'm telling you, the videos are going to be on Facebook this weekend. If y'all want to see it, better hit it up. My order's coming in tonight, and I ordered as much as they allowed me to, because like I said, it's on sale. I think you can only get like 2 packages of it, which is a couple of pounds. It's ribeye or T-bone? I think it's ribeyes. So ribeyes are on sale at HEB. $5 off or something like that. So order them up. That is literally one of my favorite things in the world. I just go to the HEB app. What meat is on sale? And I'm like, that's what I'm cooking for the weekend. Literally that. Just the cheap guy in me just loves it. I shouldn't say cheap. The frugal guy in me loves it. So how do you hedge inflation? It's real simple. You buy real estate. I was chatting with some guys this weekend up at the lake house, and I had this epiphany. What is it that I really do? I build printers. And what do those printers do? They print money every single month through the difference of what my cost is and what my tenant's paying in rent. That's called cash flow. And that little printer produces cash. And then I hold on to that little printer until that printer doubles in value. And then I sell it, and then I move on and build another one. It's that simple. Thanks for listening. We'll come back from the short break with a quick message. Jason Bible, Texas Real Estate Radio Network. Look at there.